Look, Tornado, I know you feel you have an obligation to young Justice, but YJ is Robin, Impulse, and Superboy, and apparently Wonder Girl and Arrowette as well. All normal kids, well, normal as far as abnormality goes in any event. But the Mist Girl, she's way out there. The longer she's with you, the more she's going to try to act and believe that she's human, that she can be a part of a group. But she can't be, Tornado. She has to be a part. Forever. Cooperate before it's too late for all of you. Turn over the Mist Girl, and you'll go free. What Mist Girl?
Before we get into issue 11, we need to backtrack a bit and cover a subplot that I've been skipping over to streamline the summaries. Since issue 3, Red Tornado has been making an effort to reach out to his human wife, Kathy Sutton, and their adopted daughter Treya. As mentioned in issue 1, Tornado had lost touch with his human side, the man named John Smith, and been isolating himself from all of humanity as a result. But with the boys reigniting his capacity for emotion, the first thing he does with any and all free time is reconnect with his family, culminating in a sweet dinner teasing the possibility that they'll all be reunited. Unfortunately, Treya got caught up in the hugga-tugga culty shenanigans during issue 10, and in pursuing her mother with a knife, knocked Kathy out of their apartment window where she plummeted several stories to the ground. As issue 11 begins, Red Tornado receives the news from Kathy's doctor that she's alive, just in a coma, and that there's no way of telling when or if she'll ever be able to wake up. In light of this, Tornado tries to take Treya home, only to be informed by social services, and for some reason Fightin' Mad, who flat out admit to stalking young Justice on behalf of apes, that as a robot, he doesn't technically count as a living relative and thus has to go to family court to win custody rights. We then cut to the kids, who have turned an underground lake thing in the Justice Cave into an indoor swimming hole. You may have noticed that we have another guest penciler for this issue, Angel... I think it's Unzueta? I'm sorry if I pronounced that wrong. I like his art better than I did Koi Turnbull's, especially in the dramatic shading, but there's still some issues, particularly in the weird proportions he gives the girls, which are on full display here. Again, these kids are, at most, 16. Don't freaking do this, comic artists! It's creepy! Anyway, the art doesn't take away from the sweetness of the scene, where Sissy suggests that they give Secret a normal-sounding nickname to go with everyone else, since Robin works as a normal name and Superboy now officially boasts the Kryptonian name kon-el. Sissy offers up Susie and calls it one of her names, which is both strictly true. Sissy's full name is apparently Suzanne, and given that she apparently hates her own name and calls herself different things in her head, is an early indication that cool, confident Arrowette isn't quite as put together as she seems. The scene also establishes that Susie is afraid of water, yet another thing to put a pin in for later. I'm sorry I keep saying that, but the gradual reveal of what Secret's deal is a big part of these early story arcs. Back with Red Tornado, the judge assigned to his case turns out to be a condescending bastard who not only refers to John Smith as an inanimate object, but specifically likens him to a stolen car, and thus decrees that Treya has to go into social services. When Treya responds badly, crying out for her father in a genuinely heart-wrenching moment, Tornado responds by snatching her up and trying to fly off with her, only to be stopped by a force field installed by Fightin' Mad, who turn out to have been planning this all along to get their hands on Red Tornado for their own reasons. YJ hears the news and calls in to offer Red Tornado their help, only for him to turn them down because he doesn't want the team's reputation to be smeared. It takes about a page for the others to convince Robin to go anyway, and can I just say that I really like this as a reaffirmed character trait? One of the little things that's always set Tim apart from the general perception of teen heroes is that he's not a rebel by nature. Even in non-superhero fiction, your standard teen protagonist tends to be the kind who assumes that rules are stupid and that anyone in authority is just trying to hold you down, and that's why they have to be the ones to get things done. And teen superheroes in particular have no shortage of middle-aged creator dudes trying to lecture about how all teenagers are lying rebels at heart just waiting for the chance to sneak off to smoke and drink and shit. But Tim is well established as not being that kind of guy. Given how he became Robin and the way his training took place in the shadow of Jason Todd's death, it makes perfect sense for him to be very aware of how some rules are there for his protection, and others are boundaries that people set for their own protection. Which isn't to say that he doesn't break rules. He absolutely does, when he has a good reason. It's one of those things that I've always related to him over, especially when he's given to a good writer who knows the trade secret of the teacher's pet. A reputation as the good one comes with authority figures' benefit of the doubt, which means that you can get away with anything. In this case, the others pretty easily persuade him that helping a friend is always a good reason, which is a recurring theme in this series, and thus they decide that since young Justice can't be seen helping Tornado out, they'll just have to go in their normal civilian clothes instead. Well, I say normal, but the guest artist has Sissy and Cassie in these ugly, impractical crop top things that make zero sense for their characters. Sissy might wear something like this, she does flaunt her navel in her costume after all, but Cassie? No way in hell. And again, sexualizing minors. Yuck. They arrive on the scene to find that Apes has completely taken the place over and that they're about to lower a section of the field to allow in more of their agents. The team sends Secret in to form something big and scary as a distraction, and as she's been, quote, watching a lot of CNN, she chooses a gag that's somehow as hilariously topical now as it was 20 years ago. Young Justice bum rushes the gate and splits up, Impulse running to get in touch with Red Tornado as Superboy heads to the roof to see about disabling the force field. Robin, Wonder Girl, and Arrowette take up positions near the entrance in order to fight off Apes, while Secret flits off to the still unconscious Katie Sutton to do something we'll get to in the next issue. The rest of issue 11 is taken up by what is actually a really fun and well-paced fight scene where Young Justice fights off Apes while staying out of sight, and thankfully not getting shot in the process. While Superboy tricks Apes into letting down a portion of their force field by lighting himself on fire, which, should actually hurt him because he's vulnerable to non-tactile things like fire and electricity, but whatever, it gets the job done. Apes lowers an upper part of the force field to send in the Airborne Fire Brigade, giving Red Tornado the chance he needs to grab his daughter and GTFO. Young Justice reunites in the courtroom just in time for Fightin' Mad to burst in yelling, "Freeze!" leaving the issue on a cliffhanger. Issue 12 picks up right at that moment, revealing that Apes has burst into an empty courtroom. Young Justice has escaped by holding on to Impulse and letting him vibrate them down through the floor. This is one of Impulse's signature moves, not the taking people with him thing, but the vibrating through objects thing, since it's one of those secondary powers that most Flashes eventually master, but Bart does instinctively. It helps to back up the idea that, for all his impulsiveness, Bart is ridiculously powerful by speedster standards. I honestly don't know if Wally could pull off this move, especially with 4 other kids hanging off him, 2 of whom are completely normal, so you'd have to be careful not to scramble their brains and their skulls, and 2 of whom are varying levels of invulnerable, which means you'd have to put in even more effort to push them through the space of solid objects. So it's more than understandable that, when they come out the other end to drop into the courthouse cellar, Bart is on the verge of literally shaking to pieces, which is honestly kind of terrifying. Luckily, Sissy snaps him out of it by pretending to proclaim her love for him, which startles him enough that he shuts off. Without an exit strategy, the team opts to risk calling in the supercycle, which they only didn't use to phase in because the thing has a mind of its own and went off without them, possibly, as Arrowette suggests, because it sent someone else who needed help and went off to find them. The kids suit back up before Robin tries to whistle and luckily gets a response, with the team phasing down even further just in time for Fightin' Mad to miss them completely. Once underground, the supercycle again asserts its independence and drops the kids in a cavern, locking down to force them to stay. With no other recourse, they follow the cavern to the end and emerge into hell. Yes, really, it's disco hell. Disco diet, discount hell that they're not allowed to call hell for some reason, complete with fiery pits, forced labor, and an endless depth of torture. All of it 70s themed. It turns out to be run by this guy, Dante, and his army of flying demon monkey minions who insist that no, really kids, we're on the same side. Meanwhile, back at the hospital, Kathy Sutton has gone into life-threatening convulsions. Within her mind, she walks a beautiful field and begins to head towards the proverbial light, only to be stopped by Secret, who manifests to warn her of Treya and John's situation. Before she can quite convince Kathy's spirit to turn back, the doctors attempt defibrillation, which forces Secret out of Kathy's body, screaming, "No, no electricity, never again!" She disappears, but luckily was successful in bringing back Kathy, who wakes up and asks to speak to her husband. Red Tornado has made it back to the Justice Cave with Treya, but fears that logically he won't be able to care for her if they have to live their lives as fugitives. He's contacted by Fightin' Mad, who've arrived to patch Kathy through to him via spy tech. Kathy convinces John to bring Treya back as she wants to officially declare him her legal guardian and to bring their family back together. Tornado and Treya enthusiastically agree. Drained and traumatized from her efforts, Secret curls up in a corner at the hospital and falls into a deep sleep. Back with the kids, they get a lecture about Dante's backstory, how he found the cavern full of his little winged friends who feast on pain and misery. He then turned to people he felt deserved punishment, including several people that Robin recognizes as criminals, drugged them and dragged them down to not hell while using their financial assets to fuel his operation. Luckily, Young Justice was written back when heroes were allowed to have actual morals and intend to shut Dante down, only for him to sneak attack them with the tiny demons, whose whole gimmick is monkey-on-your-back mind control. Superboy, thanks to his tactile telekinesis, is able to fight his off and engage Dante in mid-air combat, only for Dante to call in the big guns, this huge critter that he calls a gorilla, to smash Kon into the ground. The issue ends off with Treya, Kathy, and Red Tornado being reunited as a family, only for the authorities to reveal that they were lying to Kathy and intend to arrest Tornado on various charges. Red Tornado surrenders himself peacefully and is carted off to jail, unaware of what's befallen his young charges. Hex Angels is actually a crossover storyline with Peter David's other DC book at the time, Supergirl, which means we now have to take a quick second to explain 90s Supergirl. Remember back in the Origins video where we talked about DC's embargo on Kryptonian characters leading to Superboy's convoluted backstory as a heavily modified but otherwise purely human clone? Same kind of deal's going on here. Supergirl was originally reintroduced post-Crisis as Matrix, a shape-shifting being from another dimension who eventually merged minds with a dying human woman named Linda Danvers. She's got telekinetic powers kind of like Superboy and big flaming wings. Peter David was in charge of the story that took her from Matrix to Linda, and similar to what he's been doing with Secret, was in the process of gradually revealing her secret, mysterious, real backstory when this crossover went down. I'm gonna skip the parts that are clearly touching on subplots for Supergirl's supporting cast, because that's not what we're here for, and anyway, there's still 3 issues to get through in this story arc, so we have to keep moving. So Supergirl's been having these dreams of an angelic figure called Ember, and a few people have even called Supergirl herself by that name after seeing her in action. While out fighting crime with her companion Comet, who is and also is not Comet the Superhorse, long story, they spot one of Dante's flying monkeys trying to latch onto a supporting character, a local priest. Supergirl manages to get the monkey off the priest with her fiery heat vision, and she and Comet chase it down into a cavern beneath the earth. There they find a chaos stream, a tributary of the river Styx that, quote, induces chaos and horrific events from under any place it runs. Apparently, Supergirl has seen these things before. She shoots off to follow it, leaving Comet in the dust where he'll quietly exit the storyline. She arrives just in time to find Superboy eating dirt, and can I just say that I really like how these 2 pages are basically identical, just with different artists and a little more context. It's a nice touch. Supergirl and Superboy team up to fight the big gorilla dude, which ends with Superboy discovering that the wings are metal and deciding to rip them off, since the big guy is clearly a robot. And then, as it turns out, no, he's not a robot. The wings were just grafted on, which Superboy has just enough time to feel bad about before a mind-controlled Wonder Girl knocks him into a wall. This gives another flying monkey the chance to latch onto Superboy, which means that now all 5 solid-bodied members of Young Justice are attempting an all-out attack on Supergirl leading into the next issue. In issue 13, Supergirl realizes that there's no way YJ can be in their right minds because otherwise Robin, you know, the squishy normal human guy primarily known for his brains, wouldn't be attempting an all-out assault on someone wearing the S-shield. Supergirl attempts to burn off Robin's flying monkey the way she did to the priest, only to find that since these little demons have had time to merge almost completely, injuring the monkey is only going to hurt their hosts as well. When the fight puts some of the captive civilians in danger, Supergirl uses her flaming wings to block the falling rubble, resulting in one of the captives, an innocent woman from Supergirl's hometown, calling her Ember. In case you're wondering, Supergirl's actual deal is that in merging a superpowered being with a mortal human, Linda Danvers and Matrix have become an Earthborn angel. As in a literal angel, specifically a servant/chosen of the merciful feminine aspect of the divine. Ember is the name of her angelic manifestation, not that she's gonna learn that here. Back with Red Tornado, he quietly rejects an offer from the Martian Manhunter to have the Justice League intervene on his behalf shortly before being approached by Fightin' Mad. Apes, it seems, has an offer for him. Give up the oh-so-dangerous Mist Girl, and they'll use the organization's influence to get him out of jail and back with his family. Red Tornado, of course, doesn't bite. Damn, but he's a great den mother. He's then approached by an older married couple who introduce themselves as Mort and Amelia Hebert, a pair of activists. And Amelia confusingly tells him that the original Red Tornado was her mother. They claim to be looking out for the well-being of kids like Young Justice and leave Tornado with a business card. Our first introduction to a name that sounds like a joke, but trust me, is actually very serious. Down in Dante's Inferno, the mind-controlled YJ takes advantage of Supergirl's distraction from fighting Dante to head topside and start wrecking up her hometown of Leesburg. Starting with a political demonstration by sports hunters that I assume is response to criticism of a joke that I skipped over in issue 7. Short version is, Peter David and I have the same opinion on sports hunters. They're jackasses. So I feel absolutely zero regret in watching our heroes wreck their shit. At the same time, hearing music on a radio sends Secret into a genuinely chilling dream, one in which she is a normal girl taking a relaxing bath and listening to music in the safety of her home, when an unseen someone, implied to be an older sibling, comes in and throws the radio into her bath. The electrocution brings her around with a scream, and Kathy Sutton recognizes the girl from her dreams, only for Secret to burst through a window screaming that she just wants to be left alone. And back with Supergirl, the surroundings start to take on a decidedly icy look as she battles Dante to a standstill. It looks like she's gotten an upper hand, only for the source of Dante's power, a lava creature called Dis, to burst from its containment and attack, ending off the issue. The storyline concludes in Supergirl number 37, where Supergirl attempts to recontain Dis only to find her fiery wings and powers starting to freeze over. Dante takes advantage of this to start beating the shit out of her, though in a nice touch, it's the threat against other people, specifically Young Justice, that inspires her to stand up and keep fighting. What can I say? I'm a sucker for big sibling instincts. The freeze out of her powers continues to put Supergirl on the ropes, leading this creepy guy, apparently a demonic entity called the Carnivore, who's being set up for Supergirl's big bad and is the one who created Dis in the first place, to gloat that she's about to be pushed to the point where she'll kill her tormentor and fall, only for Dis to burst from his container in an attempt to murder Supergirl himself, spilling out into the cavern and brutally burning Dante alive. Up top in Leesburg, the mind-controlled Young Justice have continued on their spree of destruction by tearing open the local jails, setting all their various imprisoned convicts free. Arrowette and Robin, while giving backup from the outside, get the demons insta-zapped off their necks by the supercycle, and team up with it to rescue all the Supergirl supporting characters before either the criminals or our mind-controlled heroes can do them harm. They lure the rest of the team outside, where the demons thankfully get zapped off their necks too, and, at the request of a local police chief, Impulse ties all the criminals back up before they can escape. With the Supercycle's help, Young Justice dives back into the Inferno just in time to be the Deus Ex Machina Supergirl needs to get all the captives to safety. There's a dramatic escape that's really fun and well-paced for only taking 2 pages, and the kids emerge back into Leesburg to find Fightin' Mad already waiting for them. Thankfully, that subplot is delayed yet again as Dis follows them up, only to suddenly freeze completely solid, just like Supergirl's powers. Dis crumbles to pieces, with the only explanation coming from the Carnivore himself, who turns to his lackey and whispers in horror that hell is freezing over. But that's a story for another time, because this video is long enough already. Suffice it to say that, for as much as Hex Angels is really more of a Supergirl story than a Young Justice one, it's still entertaining as, well, hell, and you don't actually need to read Supergirl to get the gist. I haven't, though it is one of the series on my reading list because, frankly, Peter David is amazing. My one complaint is that this being the cosmology he was clearly working into the DCU, one that's much more fantasy adventure than biblical, just makes the Acolyte's specific fixation on the Abrahamic god from last time all the more confusing. But whatever. The whole thing is a great romp and a lot of fun, with issue 11 in particular being exquisitely paced. The subplot of Red Tornado's personhood and parenthood is really compelling and goes well with the themes we'll be seeing throughout about the relationship between parents and children. And the slow drip of Secret's true backstory is one of the most compelling through lines in the entire series, one that we'll be seeing come to fruition next time.